Welcome back to the Bearded Garage. We're going to start another project here because that's what we do. Before we finish anything else, we like to start something new. So what we got here is an old school manco Gokart. I think it's a manco rattler. The only reason I was able to tell that is the steering wheel has a rattler symbol on the front. I was able to find that. So we picked this thing up and it kind of runs, but not really. So let me show you around. All right, so this is the Rattler we bought for about $300. We just took the wheels off, frankly, because they were completely deflated and they just keep going flat. I'll be honest, the reason I actually bought this thing is because of this. These Predator motors are worth more than I paid for the damn thing, so we figured we can probably fix it up, get it running. The motor runs fine, just everything keeps popping off. So tires were going flat. We actually just slimed them this morning. This cage is a little rattly when you're driving around. Maybe that's why they call it the Rattler. But to give you an idea what's wrong, I had to go online to GoPowersports.com. I went up talking to the guys down there. There's a whole bunch of screwed up stuff. So this is about a 13 horse motor. And this appears to be, as they said, a 30 series torque converter. And unfortunately, you need to kind of match up the torque converter with the drive sprocket. So a 30 series is actually only rated to 8 horse. So we wound up picking up a much bigger 40 series and then some 40 series chain, 40 series sprocket down here. And then we also bought a motor mount because the motor mounts are actually pretty crappy. You know, it's all tilted and try to put in place with, shimmed in place with washers and whatnot. So I think we're gonna go through this thing. We're gonna clean it up. We're gonna take some of it apart, weld a couple new parts on, and see if we can get a super fast go-kart. I've seen a couple people build out some go-karts with the Predator 420, but we're gonna see how we can get this moving. And it's not gonna be just me. I got, I think the biggest interested party is I got a 15-year-old and almost 16-year-old and a 12-year-old daughter. So I got a son and a daughter that both want to work on this, and we're gonna walk through it together. So it's a family Bearded Garage episode. All right, here we go. Probably should have started with this before, but honestly, might as well start with a clean one, right? So I love the foam cannon. Figured we'd get it outside, clean it up, clean the whole thing up because we've, it came here pretty muddy. So we'll start with something clean. So one thing you can see on this go-kart is that the motor is actually mounted crooked. So the left-hand side there is actually lower than the right-hand side. So we kind of knew that was a problem. Sort of one of the first things we saw when we picked it up. But what that actually causes is a problem with the chain. So the chain is actually torqued a little bit. So one thing we're going to be fixing is how we mount it. So we're going to take the whole motor off, probably adjust some of the roll bar pieces, maybe even cut a couple off. And then add and change up the torque converters.
So we got the engine off, but for some reason, whoever put this on, there's bolts way in there. So we have to take out 1, 2, 3, and 4 of those to get these 2 pieces off. And then this piece has to come off, and those bolts are useless. And that'll be fun.
All right, the motor is off the go-kart, and the old sprocket is off, and then and this centerpiece is off because it was actually really crooked. I think that was what was causing the motor to be mounted so crooked. So next thing we've done is it's actually just 4 bolts, but we took off this 30 series torque converter and put a 40 series back on. It's substantially bigger if you can't tell. So it looks like we'll have a spare 30 series. Now we just got to rig up how we think this is going to fit. Put the new sprocket on, grind it up, clean it up a little bit, make sure any bare metal is at least touched up with paint, because eventually we're going to paint this whole thing, but we don't want it to rust in the meantime, or get any more rusty in the meantime. We had to get a couple new, actually 6 new bolts and nuts for the rear sprocket, since the other ones were all bent up because the chain kept flying off. What's kind of cool here is we went to a 54 tooth sprocket. I think that's right in between low end torque and high end speed, so this should be a good all around sprocket for us. All right, so all I'm trying to do now is mock it up to see where the motor's gonna go. I'm just wondering if 2-inch angle iron will work, so I used some 2x4s, approximately the same height. Looks like I can get the gears to line up, which would be good. That's the gear there, and then the sprocket down on the drive shaft. So far, this is looking pretty good. I actually have the engine mounted to the engine stand, and believe it or not, the damn thing looks relatively level. So. Now we're mocking up the steel here. This is a new motor mount with a couple of pieces of angle iron. We're gonna hold the angle iron to the frame with U-bolts. Yep, and I think we're gonna bolt the motor mount to the angle iron. So we just gotta have a couple of holes, right? Now we're just throwing the angle iron into the vise on the glue press and going on a couple of holes, so we have a place to run those U-bolts up to, so we can hold this angle iron to the frame itself. All right, the motor mount is back on the Gokart. You can see the motor is sitting up on top, and it all fits pretty good. So everything's all lined up. All right, so this is the racing harness that we put in here. Replaced this crappy old just seatbelt that we couldn't figure out how it worked. Can you get out of that seat? So you're tight right in there. So this is a NHRA, National Hot Rod Association certified harness. Obviously, the harness expired, but it's not expired for go-karts, for people like us. So, all right, that'll work, right? All right, we'll probably remount that top one, you think?
Oh, yeah.
All right, cool. So they're bolted on the bottom. We just got to figure out a bolt for that center one at the bottom. Okay, cool. All right, now we have put the seat belts in. We've tested them out with a couple of kids to make sure they actually fit, as well as adults. Now we've got to take the old seat belt mounts like this thing and this thing off, as well as kind of grind some of these flat. That's whoever put that together didn't know what they're doing. Also, on the back here, we left these a little bit long. We'll have to cut those off, see if we can get the back cage back on again. There we go. We're just going through, grinding off the extraneous parts we're not using anymore. These tabs are hanging off. We just don't want to whack our arms or heads on them. All right, I got the rear cage fitted back on, right?
Mm-hmm. Took a little bit of grinding.
Yeah, it cut that piece short and then grind that pipe off a little bit. But now we've got a rear roll cage to at least protect the motor. So, and then did a little grind in there, a little more grind in here. All right, this has got to be like part 47 of the damn go-kart. But here's what we got so far. We were able to get the go-kart to fit. We actually cut this angle iron off. That was the buoy here. And then we had to grind this to get around actually this bolt and the piece down below that bolts together. So we've grounded the sides off here and here, and that was some of the crap that was in there. Now what we're gonna do is actually, we're gonna actually lift the cage off. You guys want to lift that cage off? Oh, well, he's just going to do it himself. So we just unbolted it. We're going to obviously take the harness off as well. We're going to take, it's going to be a nice day here tomorrow for the first time in a while. So we're going to paint that outside. And now we got a funky ass looking go-kart, which is kind of cool. But we also got a bunch of bare metal still. So we don't really like the motor mounts. There's still another long piece of angle iron there. This is still just bare metal, so we're gonna hit a couple spots with paint and should be good to go. So tomorrow we should be able to paint this up and maybe tweak it a little bit. So, all right, stay tuned. All right, so we've had one issue. Obviously, it actually does run and it actually goes like stink on shit, but we've had the chain pop twice or 3 times now. So I think we actually just figured it out. It looks like the shaft is sliding back and forth, and you can see that silver shaft right there is going, which is actually moving. Go ahead, do it again. So you can see just enough of that sprocket down there is moving, and I think that's what's popping the chain. So we'll have to come to the bottom of that tomorrow and figure it out, right? Well, it's finally paint day here in upstate New York. It's the first time we've had 70 degrees in quite a while. I'm gonna paint both the frame after we tape off a few things, and then we'll paint the cage. All right. Taping this.
Before and after picture?
No, I'm just walking around it with the video on. You can take a look at these tires. Yeah, that looks way better. This way we can try to keep some of the rust off it too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not perfect, but neither's the go-kart. Get that front right up where your feet go. See how it's still like, yeah. Looking way better. I think this is the end of coat 1 for the go-kart. We actually wound up using this Rust-Oleum rust reformer to try to keep the rust off the damn thing. All right, we're back in the garage after being painted. She's black. And the frame is black. So we'll do maybe a little spruce up of a couple of other colors. But for now we just have to put it back together. Hopefully, it should be fun to drive. So we put the motor up on the top, back on the frame. The next thing we're gonna do is we routed the chain over top of the rear sprocket, over the sprocket on the torque converter, and then all the way down onto the rear sprocket. And then all we gotta do is measure up the length and pop the chain. So the next thing is popping the chain that we've got here. So we have actually a couple of different chain breaker tools. So this is one we use for our mountain bikes. This one we just picked up, it's a Harbor Freight special. And then we picked this one up at Tractor Supply. That's a roller chain breaker. So we tried all different kinds, and here are the results. So you can see we had some spare chain, we were messing around. on the Gokart. It's a 420 chain, which is a motorcycle chain. We tried this one and we actually broke the pin. So that took literally minutes to realize that it's not powerful enough. Then we tried this, which is a fascinating thing. The way this works is it actually holds on the side plate as it tries to pull it apart. So what it actually ends up doing is bending the chain apart, which seems incredibly useless. So after we wasted a couple of spots, now we had a chain that was 4 feet long, we only needed it 3 feet long. So we just were testing things out. So we moved on to this. This is absolutely the right chain breaker for the job. So I'll show you how we use that. All right, so chain breaker works pretty simply. What you're trying to do with the goal is to have one of these smaller pieces, right? And then actually pop this out so you have this smaller piece here. And then what you can do is you can use a master link to reconnect them together. So you break it to the length you need and use the master link to reconnect. So let's pop this one and I'll show you how it works. All right, so I put this piece of chain, or at least a chain breaker, in a vise so I can show you how to do this. You don't need to do it in a vise. I just can't hold one hand on here and hold this steady and crank it with a wrench. So very simply, all we're gonna do is you line up the pin and you slowly crank it. And you'll see as this pin starts to push out that pin, you'll hear a pop here in a second when it starts to go through the other side. That's pretty wonky camera angle, isn't it? All right, so you got just about to the other side. Pop this free out of the vise so we can take a look. This is so far the cleanest way we found to break it. So you see that pin is actually coming out the bottom. Pin's actually coming out the side. And then literally just pull it back apart, unscrew it. All right, in this particular case, I had to crank the upper one, move that pin down a little bit more, and you see the pin actually came out. Now we'll undo it all. Should be pretty easy. One thing we did start seeing is that this will actually stay high. So one thing we were able to figure out was actually undo it and put the wrench in here when you undo it. And then when you uncrank it, it'll actually pop it. The pin is actually stuck in there right now. So the result we have is now a chain that can be reconnected once it's on the Gokart. Now we get under the Gokart. We have assembled the chain up over the sprocket, over both sprockets, and here is the master link down below. This piece, this outer piece, is actually just two of these, one on either side, with pins coming through, and then this quick link to hold it together. And that's what we got. Next job. The next job here is to ensure that the chain stays tight. So what we're actually going to do is, since I only have one hand here, because I got the phone, is I actually pull back with my feet here, pull back on the motor so it's nice and tight. And while I'm doing that, I actually tighten down the engine bolts. So one here and one here. And that's how you keep it in place. You just pull back on the motor, crank it down, and she's and the chain's adjusted. And so as long as it's lined up here and it's pulled back, you should be good to go. The next thing we're gonna have to do here is put the cage back on. All right, we put the seat belts back on. Give them a little bit of color here. So the last thing we're gonna have to do is connect the throttle cable. So the throttle cable goes down in here. See this guy? I don't know if you can see it. So two pieces. There's that one and that one. Now that one has a screw in it. That one just holds this silver piece. So what we're gonna do is, I think, see if we can do it while I'm on the phone. So you slide it through. I'm gonna line it up. You can see you can see it, there's a little hole in that one on the far end. So this goes through here, and then this goes through the hole in that nut, like that. Like that. And we put a screw on the top of there and tighten her down. Well, that's what the throttle cable is supposed to look like once it's connected. Got a screw on the top there, and the bottom is holding the cable casing. So, all right, so this is what she looks like. Seat belts are tightened down, throttle cable is connected, motor's mounted, chain is on. Got a little bit of splash of color with that red. It is black on black on black with a red seat belt. Oh, so let's put that chain cover on.
Yeah.
So we don't have kids like, getting their arms eaten off or something. All right, we got a go-kart. It looks like she is done. Got a couple of stickers on the chain cover, so we wouldn't be able to do this without Arcade Chains, Go Power Sports, TNT Cycle. We got some stuff locally, and then I think we got a Sunstar chain here. That's what she looks like. What do you think? You happy with it?
Yeah,
It looks awesome, doesn't it?
it does.
Why don't you get in and buckle up? All right. And then once you're in, I will see if I can get her started. All right, so we're belted in, ready to go. See if it works.
Sure. I'm gonna get out of the way. I don't think you will, Ooh, close.
It's close. Let's get it to turn it to start. Turn the choke on, huh?
I'll be right on.
Good? Everything's good. Give her a shot. Pretty good?
Yes.
GPS shows that car doing 34.7 miles an hour. Woo!